Thank you, Gillian, for kind introduction as well as for this chance to share my personal as well as my professional interests. Also, my kind words to Sasha for organizing all this our virtual communication, and to you all, dear colleagues. Just I hope that we will enjoy this moment. We will enjoy the moment of maybe getting some new information, maybe some new names, some new fictional writings. Because I hope that you share that we can share our research interest in contemporary literary energy narrative studies, and in particular in Chernobyl studies. Yes, just I am. Gillian has just mentioned that I'm a member of Helsinki Environmental Humanities Hub, hosted by University of Helsinki within the last 6 years. And by visiting the pages of our hub in social media, you can see the activities which we organize, where energy and humanities sessions are within my responsibility. But today, let me focus your attention on one of the aspects of my research project, and in particular on the literary perspective of profiling energy literacy within world energy literature in Chernobyl fiction and beyond. Let me start. Actually, the Anthropocene calls, we know that the Anthropocene calls for new narratives, and the literary perspectives on energy storytelling helps distinguishing such energy-related fictional writings as petrofiction, nuclear fiction, including Fukushima fiction, Chernobyl fiction, carbon fiction, hydro fiction, climate fiction, Anthropocene fiction, and it is nuclear fiction which is in the focus of my research interest, which is considered nuclear fiction, which it can be defined as a fictional writing on nuclear energy-related issues through the literary conceptualization of nuclear energy and nuclear energy-related issues, which contributes to shaping nuclear cultures via nuclear narratives by defining nuclear energy as a debatable societal value. I'm not going to speak about today in particular the components of nuclear fiction, but within my presentation, sometimes I refer to I will refer to this component. Actually, nowadays I am elaborating my project titled "Emoting Nuclear Energy Within Literary Energy Narrative Frames." The purpose of this research is to investigate narrative tools of emoting nuclear energy in nuclear fiction, with the focus on comparative narrative analysis of storytelling nuclear power in North American and Eastern European literary practices within the nuclear Anthropocene rhetoric, which helps to highlight the literary frames of the emotional component of narrating nuclear energy as a debatable societal value within our technology-driven society. Actually, in a wide concern, I defended my PhD on Canadian animal stories. Then at the invitation of it is Scott Slovic, one of their ecocritical founding fathers, who invited me to submit article to submit to his world environment literature project, where I presented the Chernobyl fiction, and then it was his encouragement to just that I switched to nuclear fiction it was about 10 years ago within to nuclear fiction in the comparative aspect. That's why nowadays I am focusing on research in general, or I am focusing on researching literary imaginaries of nuclear energy in North American and Eastern European nuclear fiction within the post-Chernobyl age. This was the theoretical frames of my research. They include the outcomes of such literary critical fields. Nuclear, first of all, it is nuclear criticism, initiated by most debatable statement of Derrida here, saying that any nuclear event is a phenomenon whose essential feature is that of being fabulously textual. We can only talk and write about it. It is a non-event. Yes, on the one hand, the nuclear disasters and nuclear history of the humanity have changed fictional, fabulous nature of the nuclear events, of a nuclear event. But on the other hand, the nuclear history with its several disasters confirms the distance of an average person to nuclear technology, nuclear infrastructure, confirms some secret level of knowledge which we consider to be under control. And the public opinion about the advantages and the disadvantages of nuclear energy is framed not only by personal experience through the narrativization of experience, but under the influence of informational space through the simulation of experience, which raises the question about the balance fictional factual narratives in fictionalizing nuclear history of humanity. Also, I deal with my research is under the influence of diacriticism, which consider literature as a source of environmental knowledge as well as literary geography. Also, my research is under the influence of intermediate ecocriticism developed by Jürgen Bahn from the Linux University Center of Intermediate and Multimodal Studies, where he and his team developed the project on intermediate ecocriticism, transmediating the Anthropocene. He, together with his team, stem from the statement promoted by Ursula Hayes about the importance of amalgamating the scientific study of nature, the scholarly analysis of cultural representations, and the political struggle for more sustainable ways of inhabiting the natural world, for literary and critical analysis of the relations between the environment and the human. Emphasizing the steps towards personalizing and emotionalizing knowledge, where he says, if the communication scientific facts is to have some impact, kind of impact, the facts needs to be personalized or given a concrete meaning that is relevant for the everyday life of citizens, for example, by way of narrative elements. Intermediate criticism as an approach to communicating the energy sector's agenda via different media products, different media types, helps distinguish the toolkit of transporting scientific material across media border to the places where people can learn what scientists are doing. And these steps of communicating scientific knowledge include fictionalizing the nuclear history of humanity as a way of transmitting knowledge to the public and enhancing energy literacy with the help of the fictional writing. For researching the literary perspective on emoting the nuclear past, Intermediate eco-criticism appears to be very productive and even necessary development in studying the links between science, society, and environment, especially when we deal with the literary and cultural dimensions of energy and energetic resources. This helps to communicate energy literacy and its components from both a perception of apprehension of oppositional views on energy-related issues in the context of literary critical analysis of nuclear energy in nuclear fictional writing. Also, just nowadays, my research. I am focusing on outcomes of literary energy narrative studies, which distinguish world energy literature studies from eco-critical studies. Mainly, I am interested in the works elaborated by Axel Goodbody, his works on literary energy narratives, and Imre Zeman, just with his works, with his perspectives on petroculture, petrofiction, and world energy literature. Referring to Imre Zeman, it is literature with its focus on easy access to energy that shapes the public opinion about energy, playing a secondary role in history by comparison with human intellect and adventure of progress. Zeman outlines the function of literature that shapes our current perspective on energy as economical and political concepts by neglecting the role of energy and energy resources in the formation of our value paradigm, by ignoring the dependence of the periodization of literary history, literary forms and styles on the energetic history of humanity, and by shaping the post-apocalyptic scenarios for the future. Also, my research is under, as I have just mentioned, under the influence of Axel Goodbody and his outcomes within literary energy narrative frames, with the focus on studying energy storytelling through genres, narratives, and images, which allows to understand the individual value sets and collective identities about energy and energy-related issues through the allusion to myths, fictions, and historical narratives. In this presentation, I am going to address to some novels written by North American and Ukrainian writers. In your screen, just I separated them, and in your screen you can see the North American fictional writing covering the Chernobyl disaster related events in more or less way, but the literary perspective on situating the Chernobyl power plant explosion and its aftermath are in the focus of this fictional writing. These novels cover the factual component of nuclear fiction, but factual component of nuclear fiction, but in their comments, introductions, interviews, these writers highlighted the fictionality of their writings. It is possible to say that they belong to to Chernobyl fiction, distinguished by Mikhailo Pavlishin, even in 1992. It is 6 years after the disaster, with the dominating motive of victimization and masterization. Chernobyl fiction contributes to shifting from the atomic war fiction to nuclear energy fiction or nuclear fiction. That's why I'd like to say that I am trying to separate atomic bomb literature and atomic bomb fiction and nuclear fiction. Chernobyl fiction contributed to shifting from the global to local perspective, from localized narrative, typical urban Soviet city, from to the domestic nuclear, to the domestic even peripheral shift represented by nuclear geographies. Also, Chernobyl fiction contributed to shift from the geopolitical level to ecological level, and here we can refer to the perspectives by Thomas Morton, hyper object framing, as well as slow violence by Rob Nixon, and slow hope by I forgot. Thomas Mauch, Christoph Mauch from Munich. Just let me reach to this one. They appeal to the factual component. Especially spatial and temporal data, social and cultural realia, and its introduction into the literary space of fictional writing, depicting a nuclear disaster and its aftermath, the Chernobyl disaster in our case, tend to shape the informational settings of nuclear fiction and outline the debates about the interrelations of the factual and fictional in the aspect of the fictionalizing the factual, where the factual component is used by writers as a reference of literary consideration of fictionally depicted events to real events in nuclear history. Among other steps of framing the spatio-temporal settings of depicting the events of the nuclear history helps us not only to consider the inclusion of encyclopedic data or common knowledge about the epoch details in this fictional writing, not only as the archives of nuclear events, not only shape the materialization of the Chernobyl disaster via the pool of data, but also frames the spatio-temporal modality or modalities, where the spatio-temporal properties of the event not only define its historical, cultural, and social circumstances, but its representation, reception in fictional writing, as well as synchronizes the premises and the consequences of the events. Being accompanied by the emotionally colored narrative, such spatio-temporal modality helps to emotionalize scientific knowledge by appealing to amalgamating the factual and fictional nuclear narratives in this fictional writing, which results in creating the simulation of shared experience of the nuclear event for readers. Such perspectives can encourage considering the role of fictional and factual connection in narrating the energetic history, as well as to think critically about the possible ways of emotionalizing and personalizing scientific knowledge in human energy interrelations. But at the same way, such amalgamation of fictional and factual components contributes to strengthening the links between scientific knowledge and emotions, and enhances the multidimensional perspective of nuclear knowledge management. Even taking a risk to face the situation of over-emoting their empirical facts or fake news occurrences, this spatio-temporal modality of fictionalizing the nuclear event enhances framing energy literacy via appealing to ecological, ethical, cultural, and other dimensions of communicating scientific knowledge via its emotionalization and personalization in nuclear fictional writing. Just here you can see some quotations regarding to the no, not this. Sometimes I am asked about the just what is the difference between the, because you can see that I started from the my presentation from referring to the North American fictional writing on the Chernobyl disaster, written just immediately after the Chernobyl disaster happened, and the current one. And sometimes I can I'm asked the questions and the conference, what is the difference of the just, is it possible to highlight the difference between North American perspective, fictional perspective on the disaster, and on the Chernobyl disaster, and the particular Ukrainian ones, contemporary Ukrainian perspective? Yes, and I usually answer this question that, first of all, we should remember about the what is that the North American writers write their novels, write their fictional writing for Anglophone readers, not for Anglophone readers. And their idea, main idea, not only to represent the spatial temporal modality of the event happening somewhere on other continent, another country, somewhere 35 years ago, but the main idea to reflect this experience, to reflect the events to reflect to the this event to the North American context, to the American context, and to focus attention of the readers on the nuclear history of the United States. And the bombshell by Reich. This bombshell, this novel amazingly contributes the events happening in Chernobyl and the nuclear history of the United States. Just because the protagonist of his novel is Variusz Kakesh, who was born in the Soviet Ukraine after the year, just in the same day when the disaster happened, but her parents migrated to the United States, and even she was ill with cancer, and not too ill. And she decided to be involved in the nuclear terrorist activities. That's why, while following the protagonist of the novel, the writer even represents the map depicting the nuclear infrastructure in nuclear power plants in the United States, the nuclear infrastructural objects, which provide the information to the North American readers, to Anglophone readers about the nuclear history of the United States. And can I switch to this? Sometimes at the conference and some events, at some seminars, and even some days ago, I was asked the question if do people still write about Chernobyl? It is so it happened 35 years ago, but even can the writers is it possible to say something new about Chernobyl, and if Chernobyl is still in the focus of the fictional writing? And I definitely can support this idea. Just for example, in your screens, you can see that one of the latest. No, it was in Ukrainian. This novel was written in 2015 by Маркіян Камиш, «Оформляння» or the working in the zone, or «Оформляння» або прогулянка в зону. But only this year it was translated. This novel was translated into English. Even before it was translated into Italian, German, as well as German and France. That's why we can see in Маркіян Камиш, «Оформляння» or work in the zone, the Chernobyl zone is represented like a prism, providing new perspectives not only on the main principles, law, and value paradigm of the exclusion zone at this particular moment of making a step inside the zone, but also it but also it encourages clarifying the reality beyond the zone, because the protagonist makes the steps to the zone and from the zone, and reframing the imaginaries of the Chernobyl in the variety of contexts nowadays. Markian Kamish is a contemporary Ukrainian writer. He is a regular illegal visitor to the zone who prefers investigate the zone alone. He doesn't want to be called a stalker, but actually he uses this word as the best one in translating his when his novel was translated into English last year. No doubt. Nowadays, he is in front line of protecting Ukraine, and no doubt that his current life experience, his war experience, can be situated in future at the background of his further fictional works and literary outcomes. But contemporary readers tend to refer to his name to the various aspects of narrating the Chernobyl zone which is in the focus of his works, which makes his name distinguished for readers. His novel Оформляние, or Working in the Zone, was considered as the most interesting literary writing of 1915 in Ukraine. Оформляние was his first of the three works written by Kamish. You can see at the very top of Оформляние. Then Kyiv in 2016 he published Kyiv 86, and then Chornobyl. Actually, Оформляние is his first of the three works on narrating the post-Chernobyl reality. In his novel Kyiv 86, he summarizes the memories and reflections of those surviving the Chernobyl accident. And in 2017, he published Chornobyl, framing the phenomenon of looting in the radiation-contaminated exclusion zone. They all are non-fictional writing, as Kamish mentions in some interviews, but he represents the writer's reflection on experiencing the exclusion zone, represented in their protagonist consideration on the Chernobyl zone as a place of inspiration and energy. Kamish avoids any investigation of the premises, reasons, consequences of the Chernobyl disaster, but emphasizes the current spatial-temporal modality of the contemporary Chernobyl reality. In his Оформляние, he uses fortes made by himself in order to fix the space and temporality of the current Chernobyl zone via materialization of the post-nuclear disaster world. While avoiding the presentation of data about the size, the location, and the danger of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, the writer appeals to the contemporary multidimensional perception of the zone by amalgamating the various perspectives expressed by those actors, distinguishing the role of the zone but contributing to the conceptualization of the zone as a place of energy and inspiration for the contemporary Ukrainians, as well as for any visitor entering the zone. Without comparing the official area of the zone with approved heuristic routes and the unofficial area full of surprising encounters and unknown things, the narrator expresses his own interest in the unofficial area of the zone, emphasizing its genuine genuine, unexpected, and unpredictable, even mysterious nature, making the zone a place of energy and inspiration for those who try to be illegal visitors there. In his interviews to BBC News, the writer emphasizes that he doesn't intend to make a sacred cow out of the zone. He explains his position that he is not fond of all these post-disasters pathers, even he is rather patient with that. But as he highlights, we cannot cry and fall down to our knees all our lives. We have to change something, and despite this deplorable sense of this situation, we have to use it somewhere. We have to work with what we have. Оформляння or working in the zone by Markian Kamish is a signal for reconsidering the zone or shifting its reception from perceiving the zone as a disaster place, a technogenic catastrophe area, a wound on the earth, terror trauma, to realizing the zone as a multi-layered world of energy, knowledge, and potential for hope, inspiration, and creativity. The next one. One of the recent and most widespread fictional works on the contemporary Chernobyl is на початку and наприкінці часів, at the translation at the end and the beginning of the times by Pavlo Arye, which can be defined as a modern Ukrainian folk place. This tragic play features a family, grandmother Prisia, or just in origin Baba Prisia, her desperate daughter Slava. Her name is a dramatic allusion to Slavic people who used to live in the area of the Chernobyl zone, and to the slogan the glory to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And as well as their odd her odd grandson Vovchik, who is 28-year-old, mentally different guy, behaving as if he is 8, but sometimes making naive but thought-provoking statements. They illegally live in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, where Baba Prisia lives all her life. But her daughter and her son didn't manage to survive in a new place after forced leaving her home in the result of the Chernobyl disaster evacuation. But they had to return to their exclusion zone illegally after her husband's death. This family had to survive. They continue to fight for their existence, not with the radiation contamination environment, not with the radiation contaminated environment. The family get used to living in the middle of the wildlife without electricity and other benefits of civilization. They have to protect their own world from the big society, which regularly interferes into their world. A policeman making them leave the restricted area, saying that you are not allowed to live here, you are out of law, you don't exist here. Or any Chernobyl stalker or hunter who shoot animals for entertainment and who finally killed the grandson instead of vendering animals by mistake. And fictional writing shows that again and again the themes of Chernobyl and its exclusion zone appear within the focus of the world debates and precise attention, encouraging unexpected perspectives on how and new approaches to what is overcoming the frames of the Chernobyl as a historical event, but resulting in the consideration of environment, cultural, and political agencies. And the last the last fictional writing which I'd like to focus your attention, just flowers near the forest. Oh, I missed one letter there in text. Flowers near the forest by Ekaterina Mikhailishina. She is a fictional piece of writing to tell children about the tragedy of the Chernobyl at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in simple words, but with powerful images, because these books is adopted to the age of 7-11 years old children. But not only about, but this book not only about the nuclear disaster. It is about family roots, about memories, about the why the truth hasn't been declared for years and decades, about the life of a family at the time when the tragedy changed everything, and also about the public opinion and the lack of the nuclear knowledge. Little girl Staska, you can see her on the title of the on the cover of the book, lives with her mother, father, and great-grandmother, but the great-grandmother is silent and has her own secret. Sometimes the grandmother lays her handkerchiefs in which he keeps twigs, grasses, some leaves, and fold it. And one day, this great-grandmother decides to tell about her life until her life before the Chernobyl disaster. When they what her family was doing there, what they were cooking, how they were enjoying life before the disaster. The girl's parents. This great-grandmother is a force appeared to be a force dislocated person from the Chernobyl zone. The girl's parents took her to her apartment, and but she's very silent, missing her village home, collects and dries herbs that remind her her abandoned home. Together with the reader, they immerse themselves into the great-grandmother's years in her story about happy family, their house, and their farm before the tragedy. This book is emotional in words and images, and helps readers just which are expected to be children, not children, to be younger kids and their parents. Just which helps to see helps readers to see people who were forced to leave their homes, beloved animals, who couldn't understand why they should leave and why they have been taken from there. Stasia likes to draw various fantastic, funny animals, and her great-grandmother said her about a famous artist lived in their village who painted similar animals, and she also refused to leave the house, to leave home, as a forced evacuated person with the others, and stayed in her native land. And the name of this artist is Maria Primachenko, who really existed and whose paintings are within the heritage of UNESCO. This very emotional story is perceived by children in a completely different way, and emotional involvement will help them live and understand the tragedy in their own way. The book is written. The book takes into account the age of the potential readers, and it doesn't hurt the children with cruel description or numbers, facts. It is adapted to their age of 7-11 years old readers. Accompanying materials have been prepared to help children. one of the photos you can see that books is accompanied by your QR code, and in the right side it is possible to go through this code, or through this QR code it is possible to get to the link link providing historical information about the historical context of the event, as well as psychological support and questions for this discussion. This psychological advice helps understand and find words to discuss this question: how people can leave these homes, which was found in the comments in the reviews. It was possible to see that this book actually helped contemporary families who had to escape from Ukraine 1 year ago, and in the result of the war, this book helped to explain children about the reason how to explain children about the reason of leaving house, about the reason to leave the house, and and the psychological, so the questions how to discuss the forced migration, the forced evacuation are provided through this code. Actually, flowers near the force is emotional writing, but it provides the information which is well accepted by the young readers. It can look as not easy reading, but it can be regarded as a therapeutic readings. In order for adults not to get confused when discussing difficult topics with children, the publishing house has provided them with the comments of psychologists and historians through this, which helps them choose the right, which helps parents and the readers to choose the right words and answers to the children's question, which can be regarded as a steps towards framing nuclear literacy. The range, can I check time? The range of emotions related to the nuclear energy in general varies from nuclear phobia to nuclear optimism, while shifting between the good, the bad, and balancing as a debatable. On one hand, Zizek living in the end of times, then slow violence, horrific deaths to all, the age of vulnerability against climate change and natural human-made ecological disaster can make us disappointed, scared, and duped. The lack of hope and no way out can paralyze us in our actions, with further preventing from critical thinking and unbiased estimation of the situation. The personal reference to the nuclear issues, intergenerational memory, response to the Chernobyl disaster, the readiness for the secrecy of nuclear knowledge, the various levels of the trust to the government in the nuclear policy, nuclear power policy, can result in nuclear phobia, nuclear informational trauma, and even the Chernobyl syndrome, or to nuclear optimism, or vice versa to nuclear optimism. And it is nuclear literacy as a component of energy literacy can appear as a trigger for whole perspective which helps to avoid over emotionalizing and unbalancing nuclear energy by appealing to a multi-sided dimension of the nuclear history. So distinguishing the scientific knowledge component in fictionalizing the nuclear disaster and nuclear energy related issues can enhance critical thinking of the nature of nuclear energy, current nuclear agenda, and as well as opportunities and risk involved. Such perspectives can provide a narrative toolkit of the contemporary nuclear discourse in terms of implementing critical thinking skills towards nuclear fictional narratives. And some words in the conclusion. Fictionalizing energy literacy in Chernobyl fictional writing helps us to see that survival is possible. It helps to change the exclusion zones border is transparent. Legally or illegally, it is possible to enter and leave the zone, which on one hand contributes to the social engagement, referring to the researching the current Chernobyl zone, as well as it helps to it provides a simulation of experience for the readers or for the readers of this nuclear fictional writing. The second point. Chernobyl fiction shows that any fear highlights the idea that fear, uncertainty, and crime and crisis can be as a starting point for shifting to hope narrative to hope to narratives as well as resilience narrative. And actually the protagonist of the novels, we can see that the protagonist of novels experience distrust, disappointment, nuclear phobia, hatred to the nuclear energy as well as the nuclear power plant. But together with curiosity and together with curiosity, in the feeling of the investigation, they try to find not only the reason, the premises, the reason and the consequences of disaster, but mainly they accept the zone, the zone as the exclusion zone as a zone for hope and inspiration. And the last one, nuclear fiction, Chernobyl fiction can be regarded as a pool of archiving data, and it can be regarded as a tool of shaping nuclear, as a tool of nuclear knowledge management for shaping nuclear literacy. That's all I got. I know I wanted to add some words just about that. It is already the fourth year when I have been teaching the Chernobyl studying course at the University of Helsinki. It is the online course where I am where I receive grants on inviting lecturers, because the course is based on the model one lecture by one lecturer, and the students have a chance to this is course, it is our last course. The students have a chance to get the multidisciplinary perspectives on Chernobyl disaster within the current nuclear narratives. No. Thank you for your time. I hope.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was wonderful. This was extremely rich and very generous as well. You've given so many references that I know I am going to be looking into further. A lot of great reading material here. So I'm hopeful that others will not be bothered if I exercise my privilege as moderator here and go ahead and ask the first question. So one of the things that I've been interested in thinking about as I've been thinking about energy in literature and film is how specific sources of energy or specific forms of energy might shape literary or cinematic form in different ways. Also, how specific sources or forms of energy might shape patterns of thought in specific ways. And so I'm really wondering if you might say anything about the impact of nuclear energy on literary form, or on patterns of thought that you see showing up in nuclear literature. And I even wonder if you might agree that it would be possible to speak of nuclear literature that is not thematically about nuclear energy, but is somehow displaying formal features or patterns of thought that you see arising from the nuclear age. So in any case, I just wonder if you have any theories about the relationship between nuclear energy and literary form, or patterns of thought as seen in literature. Thank you.
Can I share their slides again? And I will show you there. One of my highly respected invited lecturers, the last one, Andrian Ivachev. He is one of the distinguished experts in intermediality of communicated energy and Chernobyl in particular. This one it is, and now he is in Munich, but actually he works at the University of Vermont. Just this one about just format. I can say is that very often I'm asked in the very beginning of switching to research in the Chernobyl fiction. I was speaking about, and one of the presentation, I was speaking about fictionalizing the Chernobyl disaster in very emotional, apocalyptic way. Just because I was born in Ukraine, I raised in the post-Chernobyl circumstances, and I couldn't even imagine something else. Just until the moment when after my emotional and speaking about the Chernobyl disaster, only from the apocalyptic within the apocalyptic rhetoric, one of the professors, he took my elbow, pushed me in the corner, and said, "Ina, stop making people scared with your speech. Just because radiation is everywhere. We should radiation, it is not good or not bad, it is debatable. We should just know about radiation, how it is one of the energies, and it is impossible to avoid that. That's why, and from this moment I try to be neutral concerning my attitude to nuclear energy, but I can say that yes, definitely fictionalizing nuclear energy contributes to the over-emoting nowadays the nuclear energy in general. And if we speak about nuclear fiction, it is possible to see that we can see that actually the contemporary nuclear fiction is based on even it refers to the nuclear history of humanity, but the contemporary nuclear fiction provides only the disadvantages of consumpting nuclear and producing and consuming nuclear energy, but it is actually, I don't know, it is impossible now to find the their fictional writing on sustainable nuclear energy. Years in the very beginning, in the 80s, in the 50s, or in the 40s, 60s, when characterized with the nuclear optimism, it is possible to find the nuclear fiction on nuclear energy as and its advantages, but nowadays I cannot find them. Just it is about one of the issues. It is over that as well as the, different forms of fictionalizing nuclear energy contributes to over emoting nuclear energy and blurring up the line between fictional and factual in narrating nuclear energy in fiction. Yes, it is difficult, but actually it is difficult to separate fictional and factual narratives, but at the same time, HBO serial Chernobyl is a great example of this amalgamating fictional and factual. And just sometimes I just and within the course with students we try to separate, try to find out which not what is the true, what is a mismatches with the reality, but what was used to, which components were used, which elements were used to emotionalize the nuclear knowledge. In, for example, in this HBO serial, we refer to those. Usually, we refer to those. Since one of the episodes shows how people went to on the bridge or death bridge to see their white silver or white steam into the sky to see the explosion, and as their witnesses said that it was impossible to see that, and people didn't were standing on that bridge. And also we often refer to the episode of where miners were working totally naked in that moment. Yes, it is not. It was not true. Even the students try to. They find some comments of their people who were liquidators, so-called liquidators, and they stated, and they commented on these issues. No, that's why I guess the main idea about over-emoting nuclear fiction contributes to over-emoting nuclear energy. But at the same time, one of my main points that nuclear fiction is one of the tools of providing transferring nuclear knowledge to the public. And at least it encouraged people to think about that. Yes, once I was just one of my colleagues said, Ina, if people want to know something about energy, they will not read novels about Chernobyl. They will open their books and will read about nuclear energy. I said, yes, but it is the first one they will read. Children book, not comic book, but graphic novel about the Chernobyl. It is the first one, and the next step they will try to, if they are interested in that, they will try to find more information on that. What I guess I missed something in your question, Jillian.
No, I thank you for that question. Since I don't immediately see a hand up or another question in the chat, I'll just follow up actually. Oh, I do see, I see one question from Basma. So let me call on Basma.
Mm-hmm. Professor, I found it interesting that how you talked about some topics being emotionalized. I've never heard of that term before, so I'm wondering what other ways you find that nuclear energy is emotionalized, and I'm also wondering who benefits the most from the topics of nuclear energy being emotionalized, because you mentioned like a few personal stories about like how they were like that professor telling you that. So I'm wondering just who you think benefits the most from these topics being emotionalized.
Just thank you, Basma, for your question. Actually, it is what encouraged me to switch to Chernobyl fiction as well as nuclear fiction in general, because Chernobyl fiction, it is only one part of my research. Other books are about the nuclear history, other fictional writing which are under study within my research project. They are related to the nuclear history of the United States. Just about it is, I guess it is necessary to separate, to think about some different stages of narrating the Chernobyl disaster. If you're speaking about the Chernobyl disaster, the first, it is possible to distinguish the first bulk of the fictional writing, which was written immediately after when the Chernobyl happened. It was, let's imagine that Chernobyl happened, and even within Chernobyl, 1 week, it was total silence because it was the informational blackout, and the Soviet authorities didn't provide any information about that. And it was the function, it was the function of writers, actually poets, to inform their readers about the consideration of their providing information about the disaster, but in a fictional way. Just because it was impossible to write the article, it was before the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was rather difficult to provide the direct information. That's why Chernobyl fiction was one of the tools of providing factual information on the event happening. The second stage, it was the second stage. It is so-called the narrativization of experience. It was the fictional writings which are based on memoirs and memory writings, which covered the consideration of the events of those who were involved in this disaster, or it was generation of those who suffered who experienced the disaster. They were they were evacuated. They were forcefully lived just from their exclusion zone. And the third stage, it is there. I think it is the so-called fictional writings, which can be regarded as a simulation of experience. Just simulation of experience. Actually, this fictional writing provides the information, and I'm speaking about this stage where the fictional and fictional emotional component and factual component, they were amalgamated, and they provided in a fictional way, they provided the information to their readers, and experiencing us provided us with the tool for and creating this simulation of experience. We had the feeling of as if we survived that experience. But it is when we speak about and I want to stress this moment when we speak about the Chernobyl, the current Chernobyl fiction. The main idea, not on it, there are a lot of non-fictional writing related to the reasons, consequences, premises, the historical context, political and social one, a lot of information. The current contemporary Chernobyl fiction except the zone as except Chernobyl as well, the Chernobyl exclusion zone as a zone of hope, inspiration, which makes this territory of unique. And I'm sure that in future we will read some fictional writing about Chernobyl zone, about the function of Chernobyl zone in this Russian war in Ukraine, which is happening now, because it is the zone which actually protected Ukraine and didn't allow, and didn't, because of the fear, because of some magic, because of this inspiration, because of the energy, it protected the area, the Ukraine from, in some ways, it protected the Ukraine from the north, and Kiev as well.
I would love to ask you a follow-up question to that answer. So before the current stage of the war has made the zone of exclusion such a protective zone, how can you help us to understand how the zone has functioned in literature as a setting of inspiration and hope? I know that's not the only way that it appears in literature, and it's also portrayed as a kind of post-apocalyptic zone. But when you speak about the possibility, or that there's one side of Chernobyl literature that is representing it as a space of energy that is positive, how can you help us to understand that? How how has that made sense to writers or to people in the public previously? Is it because it's a preserve and somehow set aside?
Is it officially preserved? But can you see that even I have just presented, I presented 3 Ukrainian novels which highlight the idea of that the border of the exclusion zone is, the borders are transparent. Yes, it is illegally, but it is possible to enter there. There exists some legal routes for official tourists, but there is a business just of some organization. And as for the writer, Markian Kamish, he says that he is illegal visitor to the zone. Just how it, I understand, just how it is possible to understand, how it is possible, you wonder how it is possible to accept the exclusion zone, which is considered to be a post-apocalyptic area, how it can be inspiration, or how it can be the zone of inspiration. Just, I guess, because of it is a vault, because zone can show us a vault without people. Just once at one, sometimes I ask, within my courses, ask my students, do you want to visit Chernobyl zone? They say, and definitely they say yes. Some even already visited it, and some they still want to visit it. And I ask about reason. Why do you want to visit zone? And mainly they answer that because they want to see how it is just that world without people, how the nature, the flourishing nature, how the nature, the limited world without their human agency influence. Not just, first of all, just you mentioned about how the zone apocalyptic, exclusion zone is living. People work there. Yes, they go there for some to support. There are a lot of people, over 2,000 people, who go there on a shifting mode to support the functioning of the exclusion zone. They make researchers there, and it is a part of how it is. It can be now the exclusion zone is it is the area for some artistic performances, for some installations, just which inspires visitors, inspires visitors for new ideas. And you can see in Markian Kamish, he writes that when he enters the zone, how it can be the zone of hope and inspiration. He say, I have clear mind. I am thinking, okay, how to survive. He in the zone, not how in the zone. He answers his own question, which he cannot answer while being beyond the zone. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Just because I guess I have never been to zone, because I still have, as one of the writers said, I still have the right to, I have a right to be scared. Just because I grow up in this, who knows, maybe one day I will go there. But I understand that it is strictly divided. There are some checked areas and it is possible to go there.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and I actually see that I have one that came to me in a direct message in the chat from Maya Vinokur, who had to step out, but she had been wanting to ask if you could, how you would explain the particular rapprochement between documentary writing and nuclear fiction since the Cold War. She says, why is writing about Chernobyl so specific and so truthy, even where it is fantastical or otherwise fictional? And maybe I can smuggle in a question that I had about that too, because as you were speaking about the blurring of the boundaries between the factual and the fictional in nuclear literature, I was particularly intrigued to think about that in relation to your point that nuclear literature can be a source of knowledge. So it seems that the source of knowledge is a source of knowledge about an ambiguous borderline between fact and fiction. And I wondered if that might be related to the way that nuclear energy challenges us to reconceive of space and time in a way that is different than ordinary or traditional perceptions of space and time. So is the point that nuclear energy is conveying the knowledge that the border between facts and fiction is not what we thought, and that basically reality is not what we thought? Or just if you could speak in any way to this question of, why is it so truthy at the same time that it is often so fantastical or insistently fictional?
Once I ask the similar, not the similar question, the question about is it necessary, how it is necessary how to separate fictional and factual narratives in fictional writing on nuclear energy. I asked this question to Scott Slovic, professor, and he said we shouldn't do that. Just because there is no need to separate, to separate fiction and factual. It is one of the ways of narrating the current, one of the way of narrating the current and nuclear energy agenda. We shouldn't do that. And the second one, I think that why it is fictional and factual are so close, because even we are all fictional writing is based on the experience of humanity. even we are writing about their, just if some about, we're writing future scenarios. Actually, even future scenarios, imagined scenarios, they are based on the experience of human experience, of the experience of the humanity, of that knowledge which the humanity has and the experience which the humanity has. Maybe it's just actually even what we are writing in the future, even we are writing, although we are writing about future, we are based what we as a humanity experience. And that's why you, and also you mentioned about the different space and time. Yes, I guess I like this term, spatial temporal modality, which fictional writing helps us to catch this spatial temporal modality. But the exclusion zone, the nuclear fiction helps us to reconsider the categories of space and time. And one of the very, just nowadays I'm writing on the, I'm writing an article on solastalgia, just the concept solastalgia, just which is different from nostalgia. Solastalgia, it's a kind, is a feeling of, the feeling of the feeling of distress when you can see the damaged environment, when we can see the damaged environment. Just it is different from nostalgia, because nostalgia just has the spatial and temporal dimensions, while solastalgia includes only space has only temporal dimensions. We are missing, we feel solastalgia while feeling when we see that, oh, our lovely, just the tree is broken, the place, or somebody steps on the flowers. That's why solastalgia connects to the space, but connects to the same space, but from the different perspectives. Emotional, oh yeah, I forgot how to say, just I will, Glenn Albrecht, I will say, Glenn Albrecht.
Thank you.
I hope.
Thank you. Okay.
It is one of the terms he introduced together with the Terra trauma. It is amazing. I am excited to write an article about that now.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think it's time. I don't see any further hands up, so I think it's time that we can thank you again so much for this presentation. I definitely will be reviewing this recording and looking into a number of the references that you've shared, and looking forward to your future work on this subject as well. So thank you so much, and thanks to all who have attended. It's been great to see some of my students here. So I look forward to hearing from them what they thought of today's talk. So thank you again so much, Ina.
Thank you for your time, that you were spent some more time, your energy on, you spent your energy on nuclear energy.
Thank you.
On fictionalizing nuclear energy. Thank you for your time, Gillian. Thank you for invitation.